we're expected to be the conscious man, to be in tune with our emotions. We're supposed to hold space for, emotional development when it's just not how we evolved. Do you think women today ask too much of a man?
No, I don't. Sorry to disappoint you, Jesse. I know that a lot of men complain about, say, their wife or their girlfriend asking them to open up about their feelings, and when they actually do, the woman shames them for it. It speaks to a lack of emotional intelligence on the women's part.
I mean, so you disagree with this whole ideology that men need to open up about their emotions?
No, I don't disagree with that ideology. I think that women also need to get better at understanding their own emotions so that they can better handle it when men have their emotions. A lot of women expect their man to always be strong. So when he opens up, they can lose respect for him. Men are sort of in between a rock and a hard place. They've got their woman telling them to open up, but when he does, he's diminished in her eyes. So that is a problem.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Mad Philosopher Society podcast. Today, we have in the studio our returning guest from our very first episode this season. She is a mental health coach, a certified coach with passion for psychology and philosophy, and she's the creator of the Unknow It All Instagram account. I highly recommend that you check that out. It gives you great insight into our behavioral patterns and who we are as a species, why we do the things that we do. And, the thing that I enjoy the most about that, her page is it's very out of the box. It's very out of the box. I mean, you can throw a stone and you can see all these other pages on Instagram, that are all saying the same thing more or less about healing and trauma. But Diane's page, the reason why it's always spoke to me is because she gets you to look at yourself in a way that you probably wouldn't have looked at yourself in a way otherwise. The message is very similar to what I try to do on my page, to get you to look at yourself in a way that isn't the common narrative that's pushed in social media today. So, thank you, Diane, so much for joining us here on the show today. And how you doing today?
Well, thank you, Jesse, very much for that introduction. I should hire you to just hype me up all the time. Really.
I appreciate that.
No, and thank you for noticing what I do. The reason that I write what I write is because I do want people to start questioning the things that we take for granted. So, yeah, I always try to say something a little bit different from the norm, not to be a contrarian for the sake of being a contrarian, but to just get people to think a little bit more. So thank you for noticing that.
Yeah,
And
no problem.
I'm doing great today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's been exceptionally busy week for me, as it typically is. Family stuff I had to attend to and everything. My little girl's birthday party. Among other things, soccer, Halloween's coming. I still don't have a single decoration set up outside, so that's on the list today, is on top of taxes. So there's just no stopping this crazy thing that we call the world, is it? Huh? I mean, it doesn't take a
No?
break to let us breathe.
Well, it definitely sounds like you've got a busy couple of days coming up. But then, once you've got that sort of knocked out of the park, then you might be able to relax, maybe. At least on
Yeah,
Halloween.
for a while. I can. Oh, you know
But then
what?
I'll come back, yeah?
Yeah, my boy, actually, over Halloween weekend, he's got a pretty big Halloween tournament. So that's gonna be that weekend. That's
Oh.
not next weekend, but the weekend after that.
No
But oh
rest
man,
for the
that's one of the
wicked.
things. Yeah, and it's pretty wicked over here. For sure, for sure. So understand that you're just getting back here from what sounds like a pretty big trip that you had. Where did you visit?
A pretty hectic trip, yeah.
Where were you headed to? It was a hectic trip, huh? So
I
what
visited
was the
Canada.
what
Yeah, I visited Canada and the US.
Oh, you said that you just traveled to the United States and Canada. So, was this a business trip or was it a pleasure trip? What was the goal here for you?
It was meeting family and friends, so mostly pleasure, a little bit of relaxation too, but the relaxation, well, the planned relaxation didn't quite happen because I fell sick halfway through. So I spent
Oh, wow, bummer.
about 3 days just holed up in my hotel room, not being able to go out. So yeah, it was
Oh
a pretty
man,
hectic
that's
trip,
horrible.
like traveling from city to city every couple of days. So I went from Toronto to Montreal to California with the layover in Chicago, and then to New York, and then back to Toronto again. So yeah, very hectic.
Really, what's your favorite thing about Canada? So, I mean, if I'm going to travel to Canada anytime soon, what's one of the things that I should look to try to enjoy there?
The nature, the scenery, it's beautiful. You should see Banff. Most Americans that I meet have been to Banff and they love it. So you should see Banff and Jasper. Those are like the national parks and they're beautiful.
The nature, huh? Yeah, that
The
sounds
nature
awesome.
of,
So,
yeah. Most
I've
a
got
lot of Americans that I've met just describe Canada as basically being pretty much like the US, but with things slightly off in a way. So it's probably quite close to what you're used to.
so you're visiting like is it French Canada? Is that the area where you're visiting?
Montreal, Toronto is not part of French Canada, but I did visit Montreal, the French part of Canada, in Quebec.
Okay. Okay. I went to Quebec once. Me and Angela, we took a cruise up there and we saw Quebec and we saw Prince Edward Island. And man, I have to agree with you. We went in the fall and Prince Edward Island in the fall. I mean, it was total Charlie Brown Thanksgiving special. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the picturesqueness of it, the foliage, the colors, oh man, just gorgeous,
Mm,
just gorgeous.
yep.
The Gothic churches, wow, the Gothic churches were really something to see too as well. So you said you also visited California too, huh? My neck of the woods.
Yes. I love the scenery that you got going on there. It's pretty different from the one in Canada, but I like a variety. All those hills. And I suppose they're a little bit more brown than we're used to seeing in Canada, but still charming.
Charming. Yeah, I appreciate
Yeah.
you being kind about our landscape here. I, California is beautiful, but we definitely have our desert periods of the year. I mean,
Yeah.
most of the year the hills out there they're all brown. They're all brown.
Yeah.
I mean, if we get some a wet season, they'll go green on us for a little while. It's kind of very nice, but for the most part, I mean, California, it's large desert climate. But that being said, lived here all my life. I think California gets an exceedingly bad rep, for this mass exodus that's supposed to be taking place here, and everyone moving to
You mean to
Texas. I mean,
Texas?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, they act like people in California can't wait to get out, and I'll tell you, I think it's largely inflated by social media and what you see online. California is still a great place to live. There's no people waving flat pride flags beating down my door. There's no line of illegal immigrants waiting outside, waiting to get inside my house. It's a pretty peaceful place to live. I mean,
Okay.
people forget, like here in California, it's not like 90% liberal. It's probably more like maybe 55. There's still a lot of conservative people that live here too, and so, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
don't believe all the hype that you hear about California and it turning into this decadent, Rome place that's kind of about to fall, because it's just
That's just
not the
littered with
case.
needles.
Yeah,
That's what
well, the
I keep
needles,
hearing about San
the
Francisco.
litter, that's kind of true. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, no, it's not necessarily true. I mean, San Francisco's always had its homeless problem. Ever since I was a little kid, you'd go there and there's people sleeping out on the street. I mean, it's probably worse now. I mean, the drugs have gotten newer and everything, and yeah, we definitely have our problems here in California, but I wouldn't move for nothing. I wouldn't move for nothing.
Hmm.
But then again, it's like I still live in a comfortable region in California too, as well. So,
Yeah.
so what was your take on California? What did you think about visiting the Golden State? And you can be brutal
Um,
too.
I would say that overall I liked it. That was the one part of my trip where I stayed completely with my family, with my aunt. So really, she was just taking us around from place to place, and we were visiting all my relatives that I haven't seen in years. So for me, it was basically catch up on family time. So yeah, I enjoyed it and I liked it. You've got a beautiful, huge state there.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Now, do you have a lot of brothers and sisters?
No, I have cousins there. I have only
You
one brother, and
cousins?
he's not in the U.S. Yeah,
Okay, cousins. Okay. And where
yeah.
do you fall in the age spectrum of your cousins? Are you more towards one of the eldest, or are you more towards one of the youngest, or
I'm
somewhere
one
in the
of the
middle?
younger ones. I'm
Oh,
one of
you
the
are.
youngest ones. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I'm one of the oldest ones. I mean, of 30
Oh,
of us, I'm actually the oldest on both
wow.
sides of both grandkids. I mean, I think the youngest of us, oh man, the youngest of us is probably about as old as my boy, maybe about 10 or so, 10 or 11, So there's a huge
S-
gap in between. I'm the old
Were you
man to
the
all these
role
kids.
model growing up?
Oh, I'd
Was
like to
there
say
a
that
lot
I
of
was,
pressure
maybe
on
not
you?
always for the best. I
Okay.
wasn't the role model for the best, I'll tell you. I mean, it's like there's certain
Okay.
things, I got into, in my teenage years, and then I grow older, and then I see some of my cousins, and then now they're doing, they start doing some of the things after me that I was doing in my teenage years, and I'm like, oh no, what did I do? I hope I'm not responsible for that, but for the most part, they're all just fine. They're all doing just fine. Great group of guys, great group of girls. I mean, it's what more can I say about them? Mexican families, we always tend to be everything's real close to the heart when it
Close
comes to
knit?
us.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for
Mm-hmm.
sure. I mean, me, I tend to be more of the recluse. Maybe it's because of my age. Maybe it's because it's like I'm a number of years older than a lot of these guys. It's like, I mean, I'm already with the the wife and kids and everything else. So it's just different stages in our life. And I mean, I've always been kind of a recluse guy. So how about you? Are you more of a
I'm a proper
extroverted?
hermit.
You are,
I am a
huh?
complete hermit. Yeah, in every way
Total
possible.
introvert, huh?
Total hermit.
Really?
Yep. Yeah, I like people. I have good social skills, and I'm not shy anymore. I used to be, but I can talk to anyone that I want to talk to. But at the end of the day, I like being by myself, and I get my energy being in solitude.
I'm very much the same way. I totally understand. I mean, for the most part, I'm pretty recluse, pretty introverted. If I'm forced into a social situation, I mean, I can usually do pretty well. I mean, I'm kind of awkward. I may say some kind of things that are out of the box, but at the same time, I mean, I could find my way through it. I can navigate it pretty well. It's just, man,
Mm-hmm.
social situations for me just seem heavy. You know what I mean? So let's see here. We will move on from there and go back on to the topic at hand. Let's start the show more or less. Last time we left off our discussion on a George L. Orwell quote, where he says, happiness can exist only in acceptance. So I found that quote rather interesting because, I mean, it really dives deep into this dichotomy between taking action and practicing acceptance. I mean, you look at people that are driven to strive for more in life, that are constantly action, action, action. Yeah, are they happy people? I mean, is there a level of happiness that they're able to achieve throughout this constant emphasis on action, or do you need that component of acceptance to also achieve this level of happiness? I mean, is happiness about taking action, or is it about practicing acceptance? I mean, you could be a homeless person living on the street and achieve moments of happiness through a practice of acceptance, but it's not going to get you very far in life. So I mean, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, how do we balance our need for action with our desire for happiness? I mean, can the two coexist in one behavioral pattern?
Yeah. So I definitely think that you need both action and acceptance in order to be happy, that one without the other is incomplete. So if you take action without any acceptance, you're just acting blindly and you'll never have any kind of deeper peace or contentment. Like you said, I do know plenty of people who are very driven and who are sort of on this like hamster wheel of success, just constantly doing what they can to get to the next level, but they just never realize that when they get to that next level, they're still not happy, because that's how achievement works. There's always something more to look forward to. There's always another level that can be achieved or can be unlocked. And so you never come to any kind of deeper peace or contentment if you're only driven by action. So in that way, yes, acceptance is very important. But acceptance without action is sort of very passive, and it can lead to this victim mentality where you just sit out life and just let it pass you by because you think that there's really nothing that you can do to change your circumstances. And that just makes you this kind of victim of life rather than a creator of your own life. So, okay, let me sort of give you an example where you would need both action and acceptance to be happy. Say someone is rude to you, right? Or someone treats you disrespectfully. When it comes to the actions that you would take, it would be setting boundaries with them. It would be saying, "Hey, that's not right to say. You can't talk to me like that." Or and depending on the nature of the relationship, you would maybe reduce contact or cut off contact. But anyway, you would need some kind of action in that situation. Acceptance is a little bit harder to explain because it's more subtle, it's more internal, and there are more layers to it. So the first layer of acceptance would be accepting what happened, accepting the situation. Okay, this person was rude to me. There's no point denying it to yourself or denying that that person was rude. The second part would be accepting your emotion to it. You can accept that you're angry. You know, that anger is what really gets you to take action, gets you to set your boundaries, and gets you to cut contact with them if needed. And the third thing is a deeper layer to get to, and not many people get to it. It would be accepting that, yeah, you know, the situation happened and you're angry about it, but you can also accept that that's just how life goes at times. The universe has no particular need to be nicer to you than it is to anyone else. Like, you're not special in any way, in the best possible way. And
Hmm.
this is how life just goes for everyone. At times you're going to be treated badly. That's just life, and it's okay. So yeah, if you have action without acceptance in that case, well, I don't. What would that look like? Would you just maybe slap the person or punch them in the face? That is not a problem solving strategy that I can recommend. And if you have acceptance without action, then you're just gonna be a doormat and just let them walk all over you and treat you disrespectfully for as long as you have to interact with them.
Yeah, very much true. I completely understand what you're saying. I mean, there does come a point where we need to find a way to marry the two and to
Mhm.
realize, that, well, happiness is found in acceptance. Uh, Acceptance doesn't come easy without
It doesn't.
a level of action. I mean,
Yeah.
you need at some point to practice action to set yourself up
Mm-hmm.
so that there are to make the acceptance pill easier to swallow. I mean,
Exactly.
oftentimes if you're looking at a situation and you tell yourself, well, oftentimes the most hardest thing about acceptance is the fact that you feel like you failed. You can't accept because
Yeah.
you feel like you failed. Like there
Mm-hmm.
was a failure to act where there could have been. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but the dichotomy also, I mean, the reason why happiness is so, I mean, for me it's so hard to marry with action is because, I mean, action is typically something that you take because you're trying to achieve a certain goal, you're trying to find a certain thing that's going to make you happy. You think there's happiness in to be found at the end of the action. So once you start getting in that mindset, it's like you've already decided that you're unhappy. You've decided that the
Mm-hmm.
action is necessary to achieve a state of happiness because it's not there right now. One of the things that I picked up from the Book of Joy that seems to kind of help marry these two, dichotomistic behavioral inclinations that we have is to remember why you're acting. Remember why you're acting. Don't ever act out of this place of self-loathing. Don't ever act
Mm-hmm.
because you are discontent, but rather try to act from a place of love. You act because you love yourself, you act because you love those around you, and not so much this place of needing to prove yourself or to change the situation that you hate. Focus on the positive aspects of your actions. So, I mean, for me, that's always helped too as well. So, I remember
I
last
mean,
week listening.
that's interesting because in some ways I feel like we don't change until we are in a significant amount of pain, until the situation is just bad enough and painful enough that you're driven to make the change. So when you say, well, you shouldn't act out of pain and that you should act out of love, I mean, it's true, but it's also not quite true because you are acting to get away from the pain ultimately. So what I would say to that, I would refine that a bit, and I would say, yeah, you're probably acting to get away from the pain, but you should realize that when you achieve your goal, that will not make you happy. Happiness lies in the process, not in the outcome. So it's the act of getting away from your pain that will make you happy, the knowledge that you're doing something to change your circumstances. It's not that when you finally arrive at your end.
Very, very well said. I love the way you put that. That's definitely a great way to refine it. I mean, ultimately, what we're talking about here is the great Buddhist paradox. Buddhism, there's an emphasis on acceptance, and Zen practices, emphasize acceptance. Miyamoto Musashi, accept everything just the way it is, but if you accept everything just the way it is, I mean, is there happiness to be found in acceptance? I mean, maybe acceptance is a completely different goal aside from happiness, and also you do need that action, but I very much appreciate your take on it, that we should find happiness in the action. We have to take this idea of happiness and really grasp what we're talking about. Now, we have to understand that happiness isn't the goal at the end. Happiness is really the path. As
Yeah.
Thich Nhat Hanh had said, there is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way.
Happiness
You know,
is the way. Yeah.
That's very much what you just said, and
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I mean, there's so much value and meaning in that, and I'm sure it's a benefit to anyone else that's listening now that struggles with when to act, when not to act, and how to be happy with whether or not you're acting or not. You know. So from there, we can move on to the next question that we've got here. So let's take on this question here. So, how does finding peace between action and acceptance help us to improve one's well-being? How can our awareness of these seemingly contrary philosophies help us to make better decisions in life? So, I mean, how does our awareness between when to act and when to practice acceptance help us in life? I mean, what are the benefits to philosophically diving into this dichotomy and having an episode like this where we take on such an issue?
Yeah, like I said, we need a mix of both. And they're both things that can be practiced simultaneously, and they're both fluid, so they keep evolving over time, and you get into deeper layers, especially with acceptance. With action, the specific action that you take can change over time. So, for example, let's go back to that example of the person treating you disrespectfully. So, at first, it could be setting boundaries with them, then it could be reducing contact with them, then the action could be cutting off all contact with them. Then maybe you realize that they've changed, so then you get back into contact, you forgive them, whatever. It's a fluid, ongoing process. And while you're doing that, you also get into deeper and deeper layers of acceptance, accepting your all your emotions regarding the situation, your anger, your frustration, your hopes that they might change, for example. And you get into a deeper acceptance of yourself as a person. as well, and acceptance that you're just a human being going.
So, the next question that we want to dive into is, how do you think social media influences our ability to find peace in this balance between action and acceptance? I mean, social media is this big, kind of prevailing thing in our behavior. I mean, it influences so much of what we do these days. So, I mean, there's no doubt that it influences our ability to practice action and acceptance. I mean, what are some of the ways you think social media affects our ability to balance these two philosophical ideas?
So, social media is a tool, and it's a very powerful and a very dangerous tool. And your results with it will depend on how consciously you use it. So, if you use it like the average person, then it's probably not going to go so great for you with when it comes to either action or acceptance. So when it comes to acceptance, social media is just filled with all these endless images of filtered perfection. You feel like you need to be like this billionaire over there, as smart as this person, as wise as that guru, have the perfect relationship, have the athleticism of this Navy SEAL. You feel like you have to be everything and have everything. And so that will make it so much harder for you to accept yourself and your life the way it is. And it might also negatively impact the actions that you can take.
So, essentially, what you're saying when it comes to acceptance is that, I mean, social media. I mean, it the way I'm understanding what you're saying is that social media has an influence over our ability to practice acceptance, because we observe all these different social situations. I mean, we observe your outliers, your successful outliers, and we observe the best of people's lives, and we ultimately assume that that's the norm. We assume that that's how life should be, and that's typically how life is for everyone. And then when you look at your own life and you find out that, hey, it's not so rosy, as the picture that's painted on social media, it really makes it difficult for you to achieve a level of acceptance. Um, in terms of action, I would say that a lot of the problem comes from the fact that social media, it could prevent us from taking action. I mean, I find myself
Definitely.
guilty of doing it. I get caught up in the scrolling,
Scrolling.
through
Yep.
through the reels, when I know I should be doing my taxes or decorating for Halloween or cleaning the house or something like that, but you get caught in that scrolling. So it very
Mm-hmm.
much has a physical effect on our ability to take action in life. And plus too, there's this idea with social media how it influences our thinking patterns. I mean, it warps your ideas of what you should be taking action for. I mean, now it's like
Mm-hmm.
when you're focused on family, or you're focused on career, and you think that these are the actions that I should be taking in life, and then you have social media, which provides you with a different message, and now it's like all of a sudden you want to become a social justice warrior or something like that. You want to take action in a way that's going to be less conducive to your success. So I'll give you, Diane, one more chance here to speak again if there's anything else you want to say on social media and action, and how social media influences our ability to act.
Yeah, so it's exactly like what you said. Even I find myself just getting caught up in the scrolling rather than in doing the things that I should be doing. So, yeah, you have to be very careful with it to not be sucked in by the algorithm, because the algorithm is designed to keep you completely hooked. I mean, they take advantage of your brain chemistry. They give you all these, cheap little dopamine hits anytime you sort of get a follow or get a like. And you have to be careful with it because it's cheap, sort of unearned dopamine, and it sort of takes away your ability to act on the things that really matter. So, yeah, you do have to be careful with it, like put in time limits for the amount of time that you spend on social media, and be very clear with yourself why you're using it and what you're using it for. So that, yeah, you don't get just sucked into this endless loop of doom scrolling or whatever, just procrastinating or wasting your time on it. Like, ask me how I know, Jesse. I've been there. You have to be careful with it.
I would never guess. I would never guess that you had an issue scrolling through social media. I mean, I would assume that you're the type of person that only logs on when you have a goal in mind, that you're goal oriented about it, in that if there's not business that you need to conduct on there, that it's not something that you're going to indulge in, but that just goes to show that even the typical person, that you would think doesn't have a problem with some kind of scrolling behavior. Oftentimes
Yeah.
they do. We all do. We're all human, we're all
Yeah,
human.
exactly.
I
I
mean, I
mean, it's
do.
designed to take advantage of how your brain works. So you have to be very careful not to get sucked in.
I'm not sure if you're a fan of Real Time with Bill Maher, but if you missed his last episode, I would definitely recommend you check out the first speaker. He is like forgot who he is, but he's like some kind of like AI specialist. I forget the guy's name. He's on Bill Maher, he's at the forefront of the discussion on AI. And oh man, he's got some really mind blowing things to say about the way these algorithms kind of more or less, hack human behavior. It's
Yeah.
very interesting when you look at what they're doing. It almost seems like the algorithm wasn't necessarily designed to do this as much as it figured out on its own to do this. I mean, it's got a certain goal, and at the end of the day, the way that it achieves the goal is to more or less hack our neurobiology. It's unwittingly, unknowingly doing so. It's just kind of the way that this algorithm just has progressed, in a way where it kind of hacks our brain chemistry. I mean, it shows you arousing things on social media because arousal creates action. It creates your
Creates
likes and your
engagement.
comments.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it creates engagement. So I mean, what I found, it could leave you very bitter. I mean, I gotta say, I scroll through social media and I don't know why, but every other reel that I sees, Andrew Tate masculinity page, and masculinity this and masculinity that. It's like it knows I'm a man, so it automatically feeds me all of these masculinity pages. And you look at these
Yeah, I get a
pages, and
lot of hair stuff.
you get a lot of hair stuff, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
about to
pretty much.
I was about to compliment you on your hair. Your hair looks great. I like what
Thank
you've
you.
done with it. I could
Thank
I
you.
can tell that you've done some hair stuff since our last episode. So it looks great.
Yeah.
It does. So, but for me, it's all of this jaded, bitter stuff, and I'm like watching this and having some kind of psychological knowledge, from all the books that I've listened to. You can kind of see the message. You can see what they're doing. So it's not that hard for me to take a step back and distance myself and say, hey, this is going to influence the way that I think. So I've got to be mindful about what I'm watching, where you look in the
Mm-hmm.
comments and you see what some people have to say. And like yesterday, I mean, there was a post on some popular page. I forget what it's called, but it's a real popular page. And there was a woman who held a wedding ceremony for herself. She was 41, 42, and she'd saved up all this money to have a wedding one day and hasn't found that person. So she decided to marry herself, and she took vows for herself. And it was it was a sweet sentiment to do. I mean, I get what the lady's trying to say, but then you
Mm-hmm.
look at the comments and, oh man, the vitriol in these
Narcissist.
comments. Oh,
Well, like,
people
were they
that were
calling
just
her?
like,
Were they
they were
calling her a
basically calling
narcissist or
her
something?
narcissist. Yeah, more or
Yeah.
less, they were calling her a narcissist.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were saying, that, oh, yeah, this is because, you're always going to be alone and this and that. And, oh, the lady looks like she needed to take that money and put it into the gym and this and that. And it's like, I'm just thinking, man, wow, how have we digressed to that, and then you think about the message that you see on these masculinity pages, and that's why all these guys go on there and leave all these jaded, bitter comments, is because they're influenced by the algorithm. They're influenced by these masculinity
Mm-hmm.
pages that give them a very jaded perspective on women, on life, and you see it in the comments. I mean, you do. So, what are your thoughts on that, Diane? I mean, you don't see a lot of the masculinity pages, I assume, So, but
I mean, I keep
I'll
track of what's going on in the manosphere, so yeah, I'm aware of people like Andrew Tate and the incel community and the whole men going their own way kind of deal. So I know how jaded and how upset so many men are at the state of the world, and the feeling like they've been sort of left behind and that there's no place for them, and that, what is the word that they use, that we live in a gynocentric community or country or like society or whatever, that women are privileged and that they feel like they've gotten the rough end of the shaft in life, and that they are, yeah, they feel like general society is just filled with lies, that women are unfairly privileged. It's they feel like what we hear in the media is actually the opposite of what things are. So yeah, I keep track of that. It's it's interesting to me. I feel sad for them.
I'm going to ask you one more question in relation to that. You can go ahead and share your thoughts, and then I've got
Mm-hmm.
one more question here that we'll go ahead and get into, and then from there, we'll give you a chance, to promote anything that it is that you're looking to promote. We'll also talk about uh, your oh man, so sorry, I'm having a brain collapse here. The
Brief.
webinar that you did,
I don't have
and
anything. I
we'll
don't have anything to promote other than the webinar.
okay, well, we'll discuss that, and then from there we'll go ahead and call it a wrap, because I didn't have too many more questions here left. I think there's just
Yeah.
another one. We're already about an hour and 10 minutes, and I'm telling you, I'll be able to carve a good episode out of this for sure. So,
All right.
so
I wasn't
on the
expecting to be asked about incels.
yeah, I hope you
Yeah.
don't mind.
I don't know
But
if
it's
yeah.
a trending topic.
I
It's a trending topic.
yeah. I mean, I hope I don't get a lot of them on my page screaming at me now.
I don't I don't think you will. I don't think you will. But let's take this question on. Let's go ahead and throw the controversy out there and shake people up a little bit. Let's rattle them a little bit. So
Mhm. But
so
I'm
so
not sure that I actually answered the question though, because I was just talking about what their problem is.
Okay, so if you want another go at that question, go ahead. Anything you want to say,
Uh,
open mic. It's all yours.
yeah, so to all the people who are sort of marinating in that kind of negativity, you've got to realize that it's not helping you. It won't help you take any positive steps to improve your life because you're just ruminating in all the bitterness about how life and the world is treating you unfairly. And that is going to impede your ability to take action because instead of working on the things that you can change, you are now just in the state of unacceptance, non acceptance. Yeah, so incels could work on both action and acceptance to improve their lot in life, is my take on the situation.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, for me, I think you know, masculinity for me comes down to action in spite of happiness. I mean, if I'm really being perfectly honest, I mean, I know that's kind of a hard-nosed way to look at it. But the world is tough. The world is a spinning ball of fire, and we've got to get in there and put our hands on it and get burned and be willing to help turn it ourselves. I mean, a man's value is largely determined by what he's willing to sacrifice. And oftentimes it comes down to your willingness to sacrifice your happiness. You look at the people we that inspire us in life are essentially people that went in there and put in the hard work in spite of what it was going to cost them in terms of happiness. I mean, if you're willing to go out there and strive for action, even though that it may not be conducive to your happiness, but that it's going to position, your family, the people around you, the people that you love in a better position to propel their own success in life, then that is essentially, the essence of masculinity. I mean, that is at the end of the day what makes us happy. I mean, maybe in many ways what makes us happy is knowing that we sacrificed pleasure for a greater good. And I think people, we tend to forget that. It's like we're also competitive people. I mean, men are inherently competitive, so seeing women rise, in the social sphere and social technology and academia, there's no way it's not going to trigger this competitive dynamic that we have within our brain that's going to make us want to resist and to fight, oftentimes to our own detriment. So, what are your thoughts on that? Do you have anything that you want to add to that?
Well, when you say the essence of masculinity is sacrificing happiness, I mean, I would think about it a little differently. I would say that it's about assuming responsibility and less about sacrificing happiness. Eh, Like you said, sacrificing pleasure, and that is something that I can agree with. It's sort of withholding temporary pleasure in hopes of a longer term gain. So it's about delayed gratification. That's not, I think, exclusive to masculinity. It's about being an adult in general. Your success depends on your ability to delay your gratification and just withholding temporary or cheap pleasures for the greater good. Now, when it comes to competing with women, that's an entirely separate issue. I believe that both genders were made to sort of complement each other, and we have complementary roles. And now that it's descended into a state of competition, that is just that's sad. I mean, I can see how that is the case in the workplace, but I still think that there is place for everyone ultimately, and
Yeah,
that we, yeah,
for
it,
sure.
it
I mean, I
needn't be
can.
one gender at the expense of the other.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I completely agree with you, I mean, but what I'm saying is the reason why we see this upheaval in the men's community, particularly online, is because of those competitive brain dynamics that we just, I
Yeah.
hate to say fall victim to, but in many ways we kind of fall victim to, without a mindfulness approach to it, to realize that that's kind of what's taking place. I mean, in the end, I'm helped to avoid kind of that kind of vitriolic response by remembering the words of someone like Marcus Aurelius, who says, I do what is for me to do, and the rest doesn't concern me. I mean, for me, it's like
Mm-hmm.
that's another aspect to masculinity is, we do what is for us to do, and the rest, somebody else's success doesn't concern me. I mean, at the end of the day, I've
Mm-hmm.
got my things
Yeah.
that I've got to do. I've got my ducks that are in a row that I've got to hit.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be distracted by
Mm-hmm.
a feminist movement. I mean, if they want to do their thing, good for them. I support them. I'm happy for them. I do what is for me to do, and the rest does not concern me. If it's for me to help, then I'm happy to help. But if it's not for me to help, I've got my own things to do, and I people so
Mm-hmm.
forget that these days, they get so wrapped up in the vitriol in social media, like with that
Yeah.
lady who married herself, right away. People want, they just had this abhorrent response to this. It's like they just wanted to strike that lady down, and it's like, hey, she's not hurting anyone, she's not doing anything to
Mm-hmm.
you guys. You don't have to be bothered by this. This isn't for you to do, so focus on what is for you to do. You know what I
I
mean?
think they were probably projecting, they could have been projecting a lot of their own self hate at that woman, because there's no way they'd be marrying themselves. So it's like when they see
Yeah.
someone, when they see someone who is sort of comfortable with themselves or is trying to be, and is publicly saying that they approve of themselves, that could have been quite upsetting for them, or like triggering for them.
So, continuing on that topic, I'm going to ask you one more question here. I think part of the reason why we see this upheaval in the men's community is because men are under the impression that women today are just asking for too much of a man. We're expected to be the conscious man, to be in tune with our emotions, to be inherently feminine about the way that we perceive the world. We're supposed to hold space for, emotional development, when, I mean, in many ways, it's just not how we evolved. I mean, we evolved to have a level of emotional blunting. That way we can kill the deer and feed the tribe. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think women today ask too much of a man?
No, I don't. Sorry to disappoint you,
you,
Jesse.
you don't think so? So
No,
you don't
the
think so? So
no. So, no, it
so
comes
you
down to emotional intelligence.
okay.
So, so I know that a lot of men complain about, say, their wife or their girlfriend asking them to open up about their feelings, and when they actually do, the woman shames them for it, and they feel just, yeah, like they've been let down, and that is not great, because it speaks to a lack of emotional intelligence on the women's part as well. because I think a lot of women look to men to be, the provider and the protector and someone who can either keep them safe in general. And so when a man opens up about his feelings and his emotions, and especially the negative parts, the pain and the sadness and the anger, I think a lot of women who don't know how to process their own emotions just shut down at that emotionally, and they respect the man less. But that is not a problem with emotional intelligence. It's not the fact that men can't learn emotional intelligence or learn how to process their own emotions better, or learn how to talk about emotions.
So then you think men, we shouldn't open up about our emotions. We should keep those in and play those close to the chest and not share them, or I mean, so you disagree with this whole ideology that says that men need to open up about their emotions. Is that what you're saying?
No, I don't disagree with that ideology that men need to learn how to open up about their own emotions. I think that women also need to get better at understanding their own emotions so that they can better handle it when men have their emotions as well. Like, it's the current status quo for a lot of women is that they're the only ones who are allowed to be emotional, allowed to have painful feelings of sadness and hope and sadness and disappointment and fear, and they expect their man to always be strong. So when he opens up, it's a sort of slap in the face, and they can lose respect for him. I've seen that happen. So I agree with you that men are sort of in between a rock and a hard place. On the one hand, they've got their woman telling them that he needs to open up, but when he does, he he's diminished in her eyes. So that is a problem that needs to be solved by both men and women. Women,
I hope you don't mind if I make a
yeah.
reel out of that, because I'm telling you that that's probably going to do pretty well. That'll with my audience, that'll do pretty well. I mean, my audience is
Okay.
80% men. They're going to enjoy hearing a perspective like that. So I mean,
Okay.
for me, on men and emotional intelligence, it goes back to the whole Marcus Aurelius. I mean, I do what is for me to do, and the rest doesn't concern me. It's like, I mean, if you want to open up, if she wants you to open up about your emotions, go ahead and do so. And if she has this response, then, it's your job to kind of be the rock and to not be bothered by it, to not be, women neurologically are inherently volatile. Uh, Women tend to have more neuronal crosstalk between your left and right hemispheres, and it gives you a greater depth in many ways in life. It gives you a greater emotional depth. It gives you a greater artistic depth. It makes you better able to nurture children. It makes you more of a conscientious person than most men who tend to be reckless. But at the same time, it also leaves women subject to rumination and to negative thinking, and to needing to attach some kind of emotional response to everything that happens. Where men don't really need to do that. We don't really have the same neuronal crosstalk that women do. It's why women typically recover from stroke better than men, because they could incorporate the other side of their brain better to recover the lost abilities of the stroked hemisphere. Men don't do fare. We don't fare so well in the face of stroke because we don't have that same level of crosstalk. But it also helps us to kill the deer. It helps us to not have this empathetic emotion, and to make the tough decisions and do what's needed to be done in spite of how it's going to make us feel. So I mean, I think as men, it's important for us to realize what we're dealing with when we're dealing with women. You're not dealing with another man. You're not dealing with another man. I mean, we're both human, but we're very different on a neurological level. We're very different. I mean, hormones, sensory information that comes in, we process the world in very different ways, different ways that we take for granted. So I see you there looking like I'm
We are
giving you
more
the headache.
alike than we. No. I would say that we are more alike than we are different, though. Like, our similarities are greater than our differences, although I will agree that there are differences on average. So
Very true.
there
We could both cheers
was,
to that.
I mean, yeah, no, there was a point that I was gonna make, but I forgot what it was. When you continued, maybe it'll come back to me later on.
Maybe it will. Maybe it will. I mean,
Yeah.
I was talking predominantly about the neurology, as I understand it, between men and women in the two hemispheres, and why we perceive the world differently. I mean, women inherently, when something happens, sensory information comes in, that other side of the brain wants to come alive and posit emotionality onto the events and to the circumstances. Men don't really do that nearly as much. So in many ways, it's like women want men to open up about our emotions, but at the same time, there does come a point where they do need to understand that we just simply don't have the emotional response that women do. We don't have that level of emotionality. It's like they want us to open up about emotions that aren't really there. I mean, they're really not. So when we hear that we need to be conscious men and we need to open up, a lot of us are left frankly not really knowing what that even means, what that even looks like, because we don't have it. You know what I mean?
So I think one reason why women want men to open up about their emotions is because if you're not aware of your if you're not aware of your emotions, you can sort of be dangerous to women. And so if you're a man and you're not aware of your emotions, it makes it that much harder for you to be in control of them. And a man who is not in control of his emotions is a dangerous man. And I think that's partly why women want a man who is at least aware of his emotions and can talk about them. At least in theory, that's why they would like their man to open up to them. Now, when you said that bit about, well, women want their men to open up about emotions that don't really exist, I'm not sure how true that is, because I think those emotions really do exist. It's just that you've gotten really good at repressing them ever since you were kids. And so part of emotional intelligence is sort of understanding them, is overcoming that layer of repression and going deeper. Not just for you, and not just for the woman in your life, but also for you. Because the thing about repression is, yeah, it sort of takes away the bad things in life, like the emotional blunting that you were saying. So that bit about volatility that you were saying is, I suppose, true. It comes from that emotional blunting thing that you were talking about. You don't experience negativity, but you don't negativity as much, but it comes at the cost of not experiencing positivity either. So men are sort of more emotionally numb compared to women, and that is not really a great place to be. So if you really want to start experiencing the full spectrum of emotions and just learn how to feel joy and happiness again. That is where learning emotional intelligence would come in, and just letting go and overcoming your natural tendency towards repression. And you wouldn't want to do that just to make your woman happy. You would want to do that for yourself.
You know, that's very well said. And I'm going to let you have the last word there on the episode. As that, we'll call that the end, because that was perfect. That was very well said.
Like I said,
Diane, if you'd like, please take a moment and let everyone know what do you got coming on down the pipe, and where they could find you and your work.
You can find me on Instagram. My handle is at unknowitall.dz, and I post weekly posts on philosophy and psychology and personal development. So if you like small or mini essays about how to improve yourself and your life and to sort of make you think about things a little bit differently, then you can for sure follow me. And yeah, what's coming up in the pipeline? Just more stuff like I always do, just things that make you question the things that we take for granted. That's why I write. I got into this whole thing of writing because I just felt that people don't think critically enough. And so that was me doing my fair share of just getting more critical thinking in the world.
Well, thank you so much for doing your work out there, Diane. I mean, I've no doubt that it helps
Thank you.
a lot of people who that view your page. It definitely helps me too as well. Always look forward to when you got a post coming out. It's, usually the first thing there that pops up in my feed, and I'm always sure to dive in deep to it, because I know you're going to give me a perspective that you don't see, in mainstream social media. I mean, social media tends to be, whatever validates your currently held perspectives. I mean, if it validates you, then it's all over your feed. And I think it's important that we take the time to invalidate ourselves, to look at things in
Exactly.
a way that we didn't see them before. And your page definitely helps us to do that. It helps us to look at the world in a way that's outside the box from what's typically fed to us.
Yeah. That's what I do too. I'm always looking for ways in which I can be wrong. So I'm always trying to see where I'm wrong, and then I'm trying to integrate all my opinions together. So yeah.
Unknowitall.dz, spelled just like it sounds. And again,
Exactly.
I am the Mad Philosopher, and this is the Mad Philosopher Society podcast. And in the description, you'll find links to all my social medias, my YouTube, my podcast, my Substack, where I publish articles as often as I can. We've gravitated more towards podcasts these days, so you could find those there too as well. The Mad Philosopher Society on Instagram. That's the handle for the page. I do the gamut of stuff. I mean, inspirational quotes, articles, podcasts. The goal is to try to get you to think in different ways, So also got a merch store, and I recommend you check that out too, for t-shirts, hats, coffee mugs, anything you're looking for. Please like and subscribe and share and tell a friend and all that good stuff. Diane, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me here for this episode, and bearing with me throughout all the technical issues that we've had. It's much appreciated. And thanks for coming on the show. I hope it's a good week there for you.